Ladies and gentlemen, we just saw how a change in thinking can help to increase the value pool for business and community, and it's one that results in a change of behavior in terms of company strategy. We're now going to close the bracket, if I may, that we opened this morning with Ms. Hedegaard and look at an initiative that seeks to change our behavior as individuals in order to help save the planet. And please welcome Ms. Gunhild Stordalen.
Gunhild A. Stordalen is CEO and founder of GreenNudge and co-founder and chairman of the Stordalen Foundation. She's a medical doctor and wrote her PhD thesis on osteoporosis. Gunhild serves on the board of the European Climate Foundation and plays an active role on the board of the Zero Emission Conference, Scandinavia's largest climate conference. She's the youngest woman on the annual list of the 100 Most Influential Women of Norway 2012. And she was recently invited to sit on the Norwegian Environment Ministers' Advisory Council on Sustainable Urbanization and City Planning. Please give a warm round of applause to Gunhild A. Stordalen.
Here's the story of our first GreenNudge. It's the story of how we can change customer behavior to the benefit of everyone. A story of how better energy labeling can help European consumers save the environment and money at the same time. We know people have a tendency to underestimate the total cost of things they buy. When buying a car, we focus on its sales price rather than its yearly gas expenses. Most people never consider buying the most expensive tumble dryer in the store, even if it will be the cheapest in use at home. We wanted to test if people would buy more energy-efficient appliances if they knew the total lifetime costs. This is what we did. We teamed up with Elkjøp, the biggest electronics retailer in Scandinavia, to see if scientists from Cicero could nudge customers to buy greener tumble dryers. The Elkjøp staff were specially trained to inform customers on energy costs. We taught them that the cheapest dryer might end up more expensive in the long run compared to a higher-priced yet more energy-efficient one. Then, next to the regular price tags and the EU energy labels, we added these, showing the electricity costs for 10 years of normal use. This allowed the staff and customer to add up the total lifetime cost of the appliance. The results were astounding. A simple equation can indeed make people choose differently. The new information made customers buy dryers that use 5% less energy. 5%. That doesn't sound much, does it? If applied in all EU countries, it could save more than 10 million tons of CO2 every year. And how much is 10 million tons of CO2? It's the same as the exhaust of 2 million cars, or the entire CO2 production of countries such as Kenya or Luxembourg. We believe every store in Europe should start doing this. Why wouldn't they? The retailers get to sell higher-priced products. The environment benefits, and this time the consumers save money too. You see, green is good for everyone. All it takes is a nudge.
That was a brief summary of our first nudge. So, what is a nudge? My first introduction to the term was a urinal in Amsterdam. I was reading about this famous fly at the men's room at Schiphol Airport. Just by adding a sticker of a fly to each urinal, urine spilling was reduced by an average of 80%. Surprisingly simple, but quite brilliant. Give men something to aim for, and you will keep your restroom clean. The word nudge means a gentle push or a friendly signal to gain attention. Behavioral scientists, they define nudging as a way of deciding choices to alter people's behavior in a predictable or desirable way without prohibiting any options. Behavioral economics and behavioral psychology is nothing new. Indeed, it has been applied in marketing for decades. But it's a new tool in the climate battle. 2 years ago, I founded GreenNudge. We study and promote green win-win nudges for consumers and companies. I'm a medical doctor by education, but for the last 6 years, I've been working with different environmental organizations to promote renewable technology and lobby for a more ambitious climate policy. I remain convinced that the most important thing we have to do is to transform our energy system. That takes political will and technological innovation. I've learned that these complex processes take time. And it's made me thinking. There must be more we can do right now. Greener tumble dryers will of course never help us meet European emission targets alone. But there are so many quick fixes out there, so many low-hanging fruits that we can't afford to miss and don't have time to delay. Before naming our organization GreenNudge, its working title was The Missing Link. The missing link because there is a gap. It's a gap between what we know, the technologies we possess, and what we actually apply. There are so many measures that's not only cost efficient, but even profitable. And still, we don't apply them. According to a recent paper in Science, the barriers to action are mostly behavioral, rather than economic. So in GreenNudge, we work to identify these behavioral barriers and find out how we can overcome them. Because we believe that people can be nudged greener, not just cleaner. Today, I will give you some examples on what we have done and how we combine ethical and economic values. And although I'm not a communication expert here, I will try to comment on our take on the link between communication, change of attitude, and change of behavior. This circle diagram illustrates the Europeans' attitude towards climate change in 2009. Ironically, the red part of the diagram is actually green attitude. Although a small minority of climate deniers has received much attention, too much in my opinion, the skeptics are way outnumbered by a green majority, largely because of communication experts like yourself. The good news is that this green majority consists of people that not only consider climate change as a serious problem, but they also want to do something about it. Unfortunately, neither knowledge nor good intentions cut emissions alone. So, how do we turn all these green believers into green doers? Traditional economists will argue that it's all about making it profitable. In the tumble dryer case, it was all about visualizing profitability. However, behavioral economics and psychology prove that in real life, it's not always all about the money. Energy efficient housing is not only an important climate measure, but it's a good investment. So in Britain, the government encourages people to insulate their attics. They have created various incentives such as cheap loans and grants. They have practically given money away. But still, people have failed to take action. Therefore, Prime Minister David Cameron put his very own behavioral insights team to look into the case. Surprisingly, the nudge unit, as they are called, realized that in this case, money was not a barrier. It was this. Clutter. The hassle of removing old junk. In the trial, people were no longer offered subsidized loft insulation, but subsidized loft clearance. And what happened? People, they loved it. Uptake rates tripled. And if the insulation was subsidized as well, it became a 5-fold increase. So if you guys go home and Google insulation and loft clearance, you will find a new booming business out there with handyman gone green. Quite cool. Food waste. Food waste is not only a huge climate and environmental issue, it's also a question of ethics. In Norway, the government has spent a small fortune on PR and awareness campaigns to reduce waste. But is that really enough to make us wasteless? This is my friend Magnus Leistad. He is the restaurant manager at the biggest hotel in Stockholm, Clarion Hotel Sign, more than 500 rooms. Magnus has put lots of effort into reducing waste. He told me that the problem was not his employees, it was his guests. Indeed, it turned out that 2/3 of all the food waste was leftovers from the guest plates. Magnus would of course never ever dreaming of waving his index finger in front of guests. But perhaps a nudge could do the trick. So here's what we did.
Food is precious, so why waste it? We love food, yet 1/3 of what we produce never gets eaten. In Europe, 90 million tons of food is wasted every year, generating more greenhouse gases than 36 coal plants or 80 million cars. Nordic Choice Hotels, the biggest hotel chain in Scandinavia, has taken measures to reduce food waste from their restaurants. We arranged for scientists from Cicero to study the effect when they replaced these with these. The results were striking. Even though waste production varied, the smaller plates reduced food wasted by an average of 20%. And the guests, just as happy. The managers, even happier. If the entire European food service industry could cut 1/5 of their food waste, 2.5 million tons and billions of euros worth of perfectly good food could be enjoyed, not wasted. You see, minor adjustments can make major impacts. All it takes is a nudge.
Magnus, of course, he's thrilled. He tells me he now saves several hundred euros a day. But we are not only interested in what people throw away. We are also interested in what they actually do eat. Not only for their own health, but for the health of the planet. Indeed, the best we can do to avoid chronic disease and save the environment is to eat less red meat and more vegetables. If all EU citizens became vegetarians, we could save the equivalent of 266 million tons of CO2. That's a lot. That's more than the annual emissions from 76 average coal plants, or the annual exhaust from 52 million cars. I have yet to see a politician campaigning for a total ban on beef. And even though some restaurants survive as pure vegetarian, they will never reach McDonald's size, because a meat-free diet is simply not for everyone. But most of us, we could easily become flexitarians. Flexitarians, do you know what that is? That is eating more veggies and cutting down on meat without totally banning it. Let me give you an example. In Norway, where I'm and Vibeke are from, we are currently eating twice as much meat as recommended by the WHO, as well as national health authorities. And we are not even worse in class globally. So, only due to health reasons, we should at least halve our consumption of meat. But how do we get people to cut down on meat? These days, GreenNudge are testing out whether restaurant guests can be nudged to eat less meat. Simply by altering the ways in which dishes are presented on buffets and menus. Behavioral research shows that we tend to go for the default option. Therefore, we are testing out the effect of downsizing the default size of the steak while offering an extra portion for free. And if their final results are as promising as the preliminary data indicates, this little nudge reduces overall meat consumption. And if so, guests are doing themselves and the environment a big favor. And last, cutting down on an expensive ingredient such as meat is of course good for business. Did you know that American companies have stopped advertising electrical cars as environmental? Because it turns out that economy and convenience are much better selling points. Behavioral research shows that it's not crucial for people to think green, to act green. Furthermore, introducing new habits might even trigger new thoughts and alter attitude. In Norway, when smoking was banned on airplanes, we suddenly stopped smoking in our own cars, even though nobody told us to. And when it was banned in restaurants too, we suddenly stopped smoking in our own living rooms. Now, polls show that we, the Norwegians, are much more negative towards smoking in general. Indeed, a growing body of evidence shows that behavioral change leads to change of attitude to a much larger extent than the opposite. For GreenNudge, an interesting question would therefore be, will the new green attitude lead to further green behavior? Or in other words, will the person buying the efficient tumble dryer start looking for other energy efficient products? Will he start looking for energy efficient, fuel efficient cars? Or even love energy houses? If yes, imagine how even small nudges could create major domino effects. Many of you are probably thinking right now, yes, nice, interesting, but will this really add up? Will all these small nudges really make a difference? According to the European Commission, the answer is yes. Changes in consumer behavior can potentially cut 5 to 10% of all EU greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, research shows that the majority of us will not change until it becomes cheap, easy, convenient, and not to forget, hassle-free. I am all about freedom of choice. But green choices could be designed to become the easiest ones. Stakeholders, governments, businesses should make it easier and more attractive for us to change for the better. They should search and find those action triggers, create green defaults, and add more green flies. 5 to 10% emission cut is obviously not enough to save the planet. But whatever we save today is much more cost efficient than what we have to repair tomorrow. In Britain, they are currently reproducing our first study. If the results are as good as ours, they might be the first country to make lifetime pricing mandatory along with the EU energy labeling. And even more exciting, a huge research institute in Spain now wants to do the same, but in a much bigger scale. And imagine how that can increase demand for energy-efficient products and spur green innovation. So, here's where I need your help. I hope you will go home and not only spread the word of nudging. I hope you will tell the stories about small changes with great effect. I hope you will inspire more people, governments, and businesses to start looking for win-win or even triple-win solutions. Finally, we are all tired of the heartbreaking images of polar bears on melting icebergs. Green flies, however, can make people healthier and happier, cut emissions, and create business opportunities. That was my little nudge to you. Thank you for having me.